Hi, friends. Today is a very interesting story from Reddit. Don't forget to rate the video. It's very important. Let's get started. No one should see my face. I spent most of my childhood. As soon as she fell asleep, I slipped out of the cabin and headed into the woods. I followed the trail, remembering Monty's words about their RV being 2 miles away. I'd been wandering for half an hour when I heard voices just a few yards away. I hid in a nearby thicket and spotted a campfire lighting up a dirty brown camper van. Monty sat on a chair by the fire while Jamie danced around him. I unconsciously moved closer, not realizing I'd stopped hiding. Jamie saw me first. I saw her say something to Monty before skipping over to me.
"Hey, Spider-Man," she said. "I like your new mask."
"Thanks," I said. "My name's Nestor."
I like Spider-Man better," she replied. "I told my dad I was going to the bathroom, but I actually want to show you something."
She grabbed my hand and pulled me into the woods. Her hand was soft and warm, even though it was cool that night. I still remember that. The warmth of her hand left a mark on mine that lasted for years. We walked a few more steps until she stopped at a small ditch with a narrow stream at the bottom. She smiled at me before jumping down to the edge of the stream. I hesitated, then followed. At the bottom, she grabbed my hand to help me steady myself. She laughed, and I laughed back.
"Look,"
she said, pointing at the stream. I scanned the dark water's surface, not understanding what she was pointing at.
"Tadpoles,"
she said excitedly. I looked closer, and in the moonlight's reflection, I saw tiny black dots swimming at the water's edge.
"They'll grow legs soon," she said. "I learned that in school. Do you go to school?"
I shook my head.
"I'm not going right now either. But Dad says I can go back soon, once we're out of the woods."
Even though I barely knew her, the thought of her leaving made my chest ache.
"Jamie!"
Monty called from somewhere in the woods.
"I have to go,"
she said quietly.
"Come see me again. Just whistle 3 times and I'll come find you."
She scrambled up the slope, waved, and disappeared from sight. I only visited her at night when Mom was completely exhausted. Sometimes Jamie was already asleep when I arrived. We usually only managed to meet about once every 2 weeks, but the joy of seeing her made up for the waiting. It was like a ray of sunshine after a long rain. At these nighttime meetings, Jamie told me about her life outside the woods, the friends she'd left behind in her hometown, the coffee shop she missed, the days she spent at the local library.
"Have you ever read The Boxcar Children?"
she asked me one evening. I shook my head. My mother had a small collection of books, but most were too long to hold my interest. From her collection, I'd only read 3, 2 about local wildlife and an old cookbook with faded letters.
"When I get back to the city, you can visit me," she said,
tapping a stick against the tall grass.
"I have lots of books. Oh, and we can go to the movies. I love going to the movies. I used to go all the time with my mom and dad before they split up."
"Split up?" I asked.
"Yeah, it's when adults decide they don't like each other anymore and stop living together."
She knew so much more than me about movies, books, the world, everything.
"Have you really lived here your whole life, Spider-Man?" she asked.
"Yeah," I said.
"Cool. You're like that guy from the movie Tarzan, except you weren't raised by gorillas," she laughed. We found a clearing and sat on the cool grass. Fireflies flitted around the tall grass like glowing embers. We looked at each other. She smiled, and I smiled back. She picked at the grass beside her, glancing at me every so often. "Why do you wear that mask?" she asked, not looking up at me. I knew she'd ask eventually, though I appreciated how long she'd held back.
Mom says if I take it off, something bad will happen, I said, wondering if I should have made up a better reason. Jamie picked at the grass for a few more seconds, then stood and brushed off her hands. "Okay," she said, holding out her hand to help me up. And as we stood in the moonlight, I understood that my face could never be as beautiful as hers. We'd been meeting every few weeks for about a year, and neither of our parents knew. Though I had a feeling her dad wouldn't have minded, unlike my mom. One evening when I came back, Mom was waiting for me in the yard. She spotted me, her eyes wide with rage. "Where the hell have you been?" she screamed, advancing on me like an angry bull. She grabbed my shoulders and tried to look into my eyes, but I looked away. "Just walking," I said. "You've been seeing that girl, haven't you?" she asked. "You know you can't trust them." I pulled away from Mom abruptly, and she stepped back, startled. "What is wrong with you?" she asked. "She's my friend," I said. "My only friend." "I thought I was your friend," she replied, her voice softening. I paused. "Friends don't keep secrets from each other. You never tell me anything." Mom stared at the ground. I could almost see the thoughts racing through her head. She was considering something. "Why do we have to stay here?" I asked. "Why can't I have friends? Why can't I go to school?" Silence. "Why do I have to wear a mask?" Mom bit her lip, and our eyes met. Hers were red, like she was about to cry. I waited for an answer, hoping she'd finally decided to share something with me. Mom clenched her fists, then relaxed them again. She sighed and headed back toward the cabin. "You can keep seeing her if you want," she said. "Just don't take off your mask." Another year passed. I was still angry at Mom for never telling me anything, but at least I was glad I didn't have to sneak out to see Jamie anymore. We even started meeting during the day, which made our walks through the woods much easier. I taught her everything I'd learned over the years: how to identify poisonous plants, how to find your way home if you get lost, how to track animals. "Wow, you know so much about the woods," she said. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" I shrugged. "Will you teach me to shoot a bow?" she asked. I'd only just learned to shoot myself, so I wasn't sure I could teach Jamie, but the pleading in her eyes kept me from saying no. We found a spot near a clearing in the woods where Mom often hunted quail. We hid behind a log, and I took the bow in my hands. A small flock of quail kept appearing and disappearing in the tall grass. I picked the biggest one, closest to us, aimed like Mom taught me, took a deep breath, and released the arrow. The flock took flight, and the arrow landed in the grass, stuck in the ground. We approached the clearing and found the quail pierced in the chest. "That was amazing," Jamie exclaimed. "I want to try." It was the first animal I'd killed myself, and I was so glad Jamie was with me. It made me realize I wanted her there for every important moment in my life. I picked up the dead quail, and we went back behind the log to hide. About an hour passed before the flock returned and started pecking at seeds and insects on the ground. I handed Jamie the bow and arrow. "What do I do?" she asked, holding the bow awkwardly. "You have to show me, silly." I moved clumsily behind her, wrapping my arms around her shoulders. I lifted her arm with the arrow, then her arm with the bow. Slowly, I positioned them correctly. Her hair smelled like sweat and dirt, but I liked it. You need to aim and take a deep breath before you shoot," I said. "And you need to relax completely." "Okay," she said. "How hard do I pull the string?"
I swallowed, then put my hand over hers. She was breathing fast, like I'd startled her, but she settled into my arms. I wrapped my hand around hers and drew the string back. She looked at me and smiled. "I think I've got it," she said. I pulled away, feeling my heart pound. She aimed and took a breath. She let the arrow fly, and the flock scattered. We both watched the arrow for a moment and saw it twitching. We ran to it and found the quail shot through the side. I pulled the arrow out, and the tiny bird tried to get away from us. "Oh no," Jamie said. I saw her start to cry. "It's okay," I said, picking up the quail by its wing. "Do you think we can help it?" Before she could finish, I twisted the bird's neck, and it went limp. I held the quail out to Jamie, but she just stared at me with wide eyes. "You keep it," she said. We spent the rest of the day in a clearing near their campsite. Jamie poked at the ground with a pocket knife, looking out at the woods. I was about to ask if she was okay when she dropped her head and started sobbing. "What's wrong?" I asked. She looked up, then at me. "I want to go home." I didn't know what to say. "I know Dad's hiding me from Mom," she said. "One day he picked me up from school and said we were going on a fun trip and would be home soon." I believed him for a long time, but I'm not a little girl anymore. I miss my mom. I miss my old friends.
I knew she didn't mean to hurt me, but it stung. I thought she was happy here, with me, that we didn't need anyone else.
"I want to leave," she said, "and I want you to come with me."
I tensed. "What? I can't leave." She pressed her lips together and rested her head on her knees.
"Why do you wear that mask?"
"I have to."
"Because your mom said so?"
I nodded. "Your mom lies, just like my dad. I bet you $1 million nothing will happen if you take off your mask." She reached out and took hold of the neck of my mask. I flinched and she let go. She paused and tried again, and this time I let her untie the string. Slowly, as if in slow motion, she pulled the mask upward. Everything went dark as the neck of the mask slid up over my face. And then I was met with Jamie's smiling face, the sun behind her. We stared at each other for a few moments.
"See? Nothing happened," she said. "And you don't have any horrible scars or anything."
"Really?" I asked. She nodded, then leaned in and kissed me on the lips. My eyes went wide for a moment, but I quickly relaxed because it felt right. Perfect. She pulled back and smiled again. My smile was so wide my cheeks started to ache.
"Let's run away. Tonight,"
she said. "Tonight?" She nodded.
"I can grab food and some things to last us a while, and you can use your woods knowledge to lead us to a road. When someone drives by, they'll pick us up. I'll tell them where my mom lives, and they'll help us get there."
"Will your mom let me stay?" I asked. She nodded.
"Of course."
She stood and held out her hand to me. I got up too.
"Meet me here when the moon is at the center of the sky,"
she said, as I stood there holding Jamie's hand. 1,000 thoughts raced through my head. I doubted whether this was a good idea, whether Mum would be okay without me, whether I was ready to leave the woods. But I knew I could do it all if Jamie was with me. I nodded. She started walking toward her campsite, and I followed a few steps behind. Suddenly, she stopped, making me freeze. For a few seconds, she stood perfectly still, her hands at her sides, the pocket knife trembling in her grip. "Jamie," I asked. "Are you okay?" She turned to me, her eyes wide, lips pressed tight. "Jamie." I moved toward her, but she raised the knife. I froze, and she pointed it at her own face, holding it inches from her cheek. "Yes." She plunged the knife deep into her face, and I screamed. She yanked the handle, dragging the blade across her skin. I lunged forward to stop her, but a kick to my stomach sent me to the ground. Jamie kept cutting her face, dragging the knife across her forehead and down toward her ears. I scrambled up to stop her again and again, but she kept pushing me away, all while slicing into her own flesh. "Jamie!" A voice came from the woods. I turned. Monty ran into the clearing. "I heard screaming," he said, getting closer, and then he saw the knife at Jamie's face and the blood running down her neck. "Jamie!" he cried. He rushed toward her but stopped, glancing at me. Then, without looking, he reached into his pocket. He pulled out a knife, much larger than Jamie's, and drove it into his own cheek, cutting along the same line she had. I turned back to Jamie. I didn't want to see what had happened to her, but I couldn't look away. Something deep inside me was irresistibly drawn to see. I saw a bloody pile of muscle. Her eyelids were still there, though she wasn't blinking. No nose, no lips, just 2 rows of teeth visible. Behind me, I heard the sound of flesh being cut, but my gaze was fixed on Jamie's body. Beside her, I saw what was left of her face. She raised her hand and held it out to me. It looked like... I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. Instead, I ran. I ran as fast as I could back toward the cabin, pulling my mask back over my face as I went. Mom was shucking corn when I ran into the yard. I tripped and fell to the ground, and she rushed to me. The inside of my mask was soaked with tears, and I could barely breathe. "Nestor, what happened?" she asked, kneeling in front of me. Her fingers went to the untied string at my neck. "Oh no," she said. She saw your face?" "They're still alive," I said. "We can help them." "It's too late for them, son. I'm so sorry." I sobbed uncontrollably for a few more seconds, then looked at my mother. "When you said something bad would happen if anyone saw my face, you didn't mean something bad would happen to me, did you?" I sat at the kitchen table. Mom poured me a glass of cool water. I could tell she was stalling, but I didn't care. Everything had gone wrong, and nothing she said could fix it. She sat down across from me and took my hand. "I didn't want to tell you. I hoped I'd never have to." She glanced around, then looked at me. "In the town on the other side of the woods where I grew up, there were stories about creatures that lived in the forest. Beings that only showed themselves when they wanted to. Spirits, ghosts, monsters. The locals had a name for one specific kind of creature," she continued. "We called them face stealers." My heart stopped for a moment. "They said if you looked at their face, they'd take yours. As kids, we thought it was just a story to scare us from going too deep into the woods. That's what grown-ups do, isn't it? Lie to kids to keep them safe? That's what I learned to do, Nestor. And I don't know if it was right. Maybe I should have told you everything from the start." She sighed. I wanted to say something, but I couldn't find the words. "For most of my life, I didn't believe in any of it," Mom said, pausing to look at me. Then one day, that changed. I was walking in the woods. I'd gone farther than I should have. That wasn't unusual. I grew up among these trees and knew how to find my way back. But when I was about to turn around, I noticed a man a few yards away, off the trail. At first, I didn't think much of it, figured he was hunting or gathering mushrooms. But when he turned toward me, he had no face. It was cut off. Everything cut away except the teeth and ears. My hands began to shake. The image of Jamie's skinless face wouldn't leave my head. I thought the man must be crazy. But then it occurred to me that maybe there was a grain of truth in all those stories I'd dismissed as nonsense. She looked at me, then away. It was the first time I'd heard her curse. I was about to run when I saw something pale in the grass a few yards away. A child, no more than 2 or 3 years old, completely naked, alone in the woods. He was sitting with his back to me. I walked over to him and saw the man's cut-off face. Mom closed her eyes, holding back tears. I didn't know what to do. I thought about just leaving you there, but then you started crying, and that crying broke my heart. I'd never thought about having children, but she swallowed. I draped my shirt over your head and picked you up, and when you wrapped your little arms around my neck, I knew I had to protect you. So I just kept walking, deeper into the woods, not knowing what to do, but hoping I'd figure it out along the way. She answered my first question before I could ask it. I don't know who left you there or why, she said.
I wondered if your real parents would come looking for you. And maybe that's part of why I wanted us to stay as hidden as possible. Her gaze drifted to me. Nesta, she began. I don't want to ask this, son, but I think I have to. When your friend did what she did you enjoy it? Of course I hadn't enjoyed it, I thought, as I walked back to the spot. But I didn't have time to analyze my emotions right now. I thought I'd felt horror, but had I mistaken excitement for horror? The sun was starting to set by the time I reached the clearing where Jamie and Monty lay. They were both on their backs, blood spreading across the bright green grass. I approached slowly, not wanting to see what had happened to their faces, but unable to stop myself. I stopped right next to their bodies and noticed something on the ground. A small bundle of pink flesh. Jamie's face. For a few moments I stood frozen, sickened by the thought of what her face must look like detached from her body. Still, I moved toward it. I picked it up, brushing off insects and feeling the softness of the flesh between my fingers. As thick blood coated my palms, I felt the corners of my mouth start to curl into a smile. I shuddered and dropped Jamie's face, then ran, wiping my bloody hands on my pants. I sat in my room for a long time, staring at the wall. My hands still hummed with the sensation of Jamie's face between my fingers. The fear and nausea had faded, replaced by a pleasure I'd never known before. My body felt light, and the constant fear and anxiety that usually filled my brain were gone. I felt more confident and smarter, though at the time that seemed impossible. I sat there, savoring the feeling, not wanting it to end. But when it did, I felt worse than ever. My head was shrouded in a dark cloud, my body heavy and seemingly tethered to the space around me. The realization that I'd never see my best friend again washed over me. The guilt of being the reason she was dead made me wish it had been me instead. I cried for hours, until I had no tears left. Mom checked on me a few times, but avoided coming into my room. "Just let me know if you need anything, okay?" she asked once. I heard her go to her room and close the door. Until that day, she'd never closed her door at night. I sensed something was wrong with her, and it became even more obvious over the next few days. She avoided looking me in the eyes and spent more time alone. She never brought the subject up again, and I was grateful for that. The guilt over killing Jamie never faded, but neither did the memory of the ecstasy I'd felt afterward. It created a temptation to go out and find someone else to show my face to. I thought about it constantly. Sometimes the urge drowned out every other thought. Things got so bad that one day, when I saw Mom working outside, I walked up behind her and, without thinking, started to take off my mask. Mom heard my footsteps, spun around, and dropped the hoe in her hands. The horror on her face. The woman who'd kept me alive, who loved me even knowing what I was, broke my heart. Seeing her so scared of me was worse than seeing Jamie's body. From then on, Mom slept with a chair propped against her door at night. One night, while she was asleep, I crept into her workshop and found the large needle she used for leatherwork. I grabbed it along with a thick spool of twine. Jamie's face flashed in my memory. First as it was when we met, then as it was at the end. I knew it was awful, even if my emotions didn't agree, and I felt I had to listen to reason. If the urge wouldn't go away, I needed to make sure I couldn't take the mask off. I threaded the needle with the twine, pressed it against my neck, and took a deep breath.
The needle pierced my skin, then the edge of the mask. I shuddered as the twine slid through my flesh, feeling every inch of its rough edges scrape against the inside of my skin. Crimson rivulets ran from each puncture on my neck. The sharp burning I'd felt when I first pierced my skin gave way to a dull ache. For the first time in my life, the mask felt warm and comforting. I breathed in its leather smell, then lay back in bed, grateful I would never cause anyone the pain I'd caused Jamie again. My bed is much more comfortable now. I bought a weighted blanket and a goose-down pillow, and the difference is remarkable. It'll be 10 years since I left the woods in a month. Mom died the year before that, and living there alone, well, it was so hard I can't even describe it, though some nights I'd give anything for that silence and peace. My apartment has a stunning view of the bustling city center, and the noise can be quite loud sometimes. Thank God my ex-girlfriend gave me noise-canceling headphones for Christmas last year. Even though it's my day off, I decided to do a little cleaning. I still haven't hired a new cleaning lady, and the apartment has become a real mess. I walk into the bathroom and pause for a moment to look in the mirror. I'm wearing my night mask. It's thinner than any of the masks I wore as a child, but it's thick enough to hide my face. This mask is milky white, made of thin plastic. It only covers my face, leaving my hair, ears, and neck exposed. The scars from sewing the old mask on have faded over the years. No one has ever asked about them. My clothes hide them well. On the bathroom counter are several other masks I made myself from materials I've collected over the years. I've been perfecting them since I left the woods. For a while, I managed with crude masks, blaming severe scarring, but I realized I needed to get close to people before doing what I need to do. And people need something they can see. Eyes, lips, cheeks. Now I can match masks almost perfectly. They replicate every wrinkle on my face and match my skin tone. Only occasionally does someone notice something is off about my face. Maybe they see the plastic shine on the artificial skin, or traces of makeup around the lips or eyes. But they just look away and go about their business, wondering if they imagined it. I decide to start cleaning in my room, tackling the clutter in my closet. But before I begin, I indulge in a memory and pull out a leather box from the far corner of the closet.
I set it on the bed and opened the lid. A smile spreads across my cheeks. I managed to keep most of them. The most recent ones are my ex-girlfriend's face and the cleaning lady's. There are 23 in total, but I plan to collect more, so I need to come up with a better storage system. The sight of the empty eye sockets and ragged edges of the faces always brings a slight sense of the euphoria I felt when I took them. But at the same time, I feel sad. Sad that I never went back for Jamie's face before the forest took it.
How did you like today's episode? Don't forget to rate the video. Thanks, and see you soon.